Hello out there, ladies and gentlemen. James here. Hope you're having. I just want to thank you for the subscribers that been with me for a while. Right now, I'm just hope everything gonna have a good holiday. But before I want to make another couple of videos before I leave and start next week. But this video I did this was on riots. There's always American riots goes back longer than just 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And as you see, the riots go back to the 1900s, before the 1900s. And I just want to take you to show you different pictures of different riots. This riot, this is an old riot. You can tell how old it is. But this is like it's back in the 1800s. Tell by the wagon. 1967 riots. Detroit riots in 1943. Detroit riots. This is one of the worst American riots. Riots in American history. There have always been riots. 68 riots. Tulsa, Oklahoma riots. That was a race riot. Up to 1921. Then this is the U.S. Capitol riot. And this is of course, this was the recent one. This was the 1400s, 1800s. This is a timeline. But there's always, in America, have always been riots. There's always been violence. And America was really founded on bloodshed. And I mean, people don't like to hear this, but it's true. All the way back, there's always been violence against a group of people. Particularly whether it was political or racial, there's always been riots. Go way back before early part of America. So it's something when we see other countries rioting, and we really can't say too much because we've done it over the period since this country was founded on riots and bloodshed and violence. From the past to the present, there's always been riots. And here's an old ancient picture from look like it's back in the 1800s. There were riots. But there were always riots. So it was slave revolts. But there was always a riot. And some of the riots was someone you would believe how someone got started. Particularly, someone tell a lie and people believe it and the whole town goes up in flames. See, whether they wanted to erase critical race theory out of schools, one day the future generations are going to come online and see this. They're going to see what their history have come in this country. They're going to see the political riots, the racial riots, of all the decades of riots in America. Just America. There's no other part of the world. Right now, focus on America. This was the massacre, the Chinese massacre in 1871. Wow. Here it is right here. There was a massacre of Chinese people in 1871 of lynching. See, this lynching thing goes back. And this was also in America. A lot of people probably don't know this. So America was founded on bloodshed. Basically, it's founded on bloodshed. People had to die, people got injured, got maimed. Each different group. This was the other Irish riots. They were riots of the 1800s. This was an Irish riot. This was this is around about during the World War, during the Civil War riots. Oops. I'm sorry about that. But this is the riots. America has always been in a riot. So those who are coming to, there's a lot of people probably don't know this. From here, the younger generations don't know. Some people around the world don't know that this happened in America. We've always been violent. We've always been this violent over something that goes back centuries of violence. The 1888 labor riot. But you see how bloodshed, what I'm saying is that you see how bloodshed has always causes. But right now you see the Capitol rioters, you see the other riots. And but this America has a spiritual of violence like any other part of the world. Some of it was deadly, especially political and racial violence. The most racial violence of other races or groups suffered. The Latino group suffered. You see the Chinese and different other people that were involved, right? But the one group that suffered the worst riots in different cities among was the African Americans. From the early part of the century were African Americans. Then the Native Americans. But mostly it was African Americans. So really, African Americans is one of the groups that have been fighting this battle for centuries and centuries. But there's always been violence. What I'm saying is, this was in the 1830s. But when you look at the pictures, you wouldn't believe in different parts of the world, in America, throughout history, from every generation, there is a riot. Every generation had a riot. Riots in Los Angeles, Latinos getting the riots. All these people getting the riots. There were gang riots. Gang riots have been around, not just gangs of today, but there were gangs back then in the early part of the century. There were anti-brutal history of anti-Latino riots. They would lynch. This is where does lynching come from? So, what you see, has been going on and on and on and on. And mostly it's been racial. Majority of the riots, other than a few of them on here, due to labor, political, but most of the riots are racial riots of immigrants and non-European groups. First it started among European groups, then it went out to other groups. But the main was African American, Latino, sometimes. It depends on what part of the country and area it was. And then, of course, later on it was LGBTQ. But as you see, someone always got maimed, beat up, and death. Prison riots. Everything has been a riot. The spirit of murder, had always been on the American shores of this land. It goes back centuries, and you can't hide this. Your kids, the future generations, are going to see this one day. They're going to learn. And it didn't just start in our era. It was all the way back since the founding people of this country were setting up course. So, I just want to take the time out to show you different riots, different eras, different people, different time periods. Here's one right here. From 1903 this is the Union riots. This is the labor. From 1903 to 2006. So, America has always been on a riot. There's been assassinations that go back to the 1800s all the way to now. Always been a riot. Bloodshed. So, I guess the point I'm making is it never stops. It never stops. It's not some group of people, somebody, somewhere, whether it's a place like Charlotte, what happened in Charlottesville, or whether it happened in the prison, whether it happened someplace, there's always going to be violence and bloodshed. Whether it happened behind prison walls, there's racial riots behind prison walls. And racial violence among the next generation. What I'm saying is that it's always been the spirit of it in this country. And I can show people like this, it's always been here. There's pictures of it from every decade, every century, every era. There was violence. And so blood had to shed. Whether it was with the stick or whether it was with the gun. So this is going to be like this until the Lord comes back, those who believe in God. But America has been one of the most violent countries on earth that goes back centuries. The violent. This was a century about little known mass hanging of black soldiers. These were black soldiers that were hanged. Burned down churches. If someone, and this was due to, this is hanging. These was the soldiers that were put on trial. This was another. See, this was back in, you could tell this back in the early 1900s. We've always labor revolt. But this one I want genocide, violence. So the things you see, that's what we are. But I hope this